Okay, today's a small update. This was all that was new this week that I didn't already have. It's just Record of Ragnarok Season 1, which includes an exclusive poster apparently. So let's see, from the back, is there anything interesting to tell from it? Viz release. Curious title. Do I know anything about it? I don't know. So, yeah, okay, there's definitely more in here than usual, because, you know, Viz likes to also advertise Shuriken, Vampire Knight, JoJo, usually there's JoJo on the back. Ragnarok, you know, they like to let you know. By the way, we have the manga versions of this too. This is the poster. Feels like it's maybe coated with something. Or maybe... Yeah, I don't know, just really weird texture to it. That's an awfully naked man there. Well, that's it in a nutshell. Then in here we have Blu-ray Disc 2, Blu-ray Disc 1. So, all Blu-ray. Let's just get this back in here real quick. And here's this week's anime Blu-ray collection update.
Alright, yeah, so the update was small, but hopefully, you know, those of you that are interested in that got something of a fix. I know the bigger updates are better, but a lot of new stuff started airing this week, so let's... interesting. Yeah, basically he's got a streamer on, and yeah, I don't know that they're sending him to the map that they think that they're wanting him to go to. But anyways, my Friday friend is back, and, you know, he prioritizes One Piece very highly. In this case, I was probably more curious about My Hero Academia, but One Piece it is, and I just don't have the energy to think about trying to watch an entire both discs of this, so we only watched the first disc, which I think has disproportionately more episodes, but putting that aside, content-wise, I actually thought it felt kind of fun. I'm trying to think if I can explain why in a nutshell. I suppose because the previous one, they kind of revealed some big world-building stuff, and then this one started setting up some other stuff, and I don't know, I guess I enjoyed the way it kept setting up all the pieces to go where it was next. It was a little bit slower than I think I would have preferred, but overall, just things that made me smile. So, yeah, pretty good. Let me see, I watched How Not to Summon a Demon Lord Season 2. That would be How Not to Summon a Season Lord Omega. And this was the supposedly uncut version, which I probably was. I didn't notice anything, but I've watched so much stuff off of Blu-ray DVD that was uncensored that maybe nothing about it just stuck out to me. Like, I don't think there was any nipples in there, for example, so I'm not exactly sure what was uncensored. Maybe they're saying that what was uncensored wasn't what was actually uncensored. I don't know. Probably means nothing, but content-wise, I guess I'd say overall it felt ever so slightly better than the first season. I guess my hesitation there was it's not like it was like improvements across the board per se. A couple of things a little bit better, a couple of things feeling a little bit more but overall I felt like it bounced out. Like, I think one of the things I mentioned about it was maybe I didn't quite know what they were doing with the characters and wondering if there was much of a point to them. I felt like the characters made a lot more of a difference. And this isn't the main character, this is the cast of characters around him. Like, before they were just a pair of boobies and flat chests that kind of were semi-erotic, who had some point in the story, but then it's like, okay, but they're a driver for this, but not as strong of a driver as I would have hoped. And if you're going to have some characters that are not as strong of a driver, then you kind of want them to be kind of a part of what's going on. And it didn't feel like they were as much a part of what was going on as they should have been. Which is good for making the main character look pretty nice, but it does basically mean that they just feel like they're eye candy on the side. And I felt like that was improved here for sure. But our main characters' interactions, I guess they didn't quite feel as Demon Lordy per se. Not like so much less that it's like, oh, fine, whatever. I guess it's more like because the show is introducing a lot more things that are like closer to max level character sort of concepts in the world, which he is, and I think he came out on them relatively good, but you know, I don't know. I think it's a weakness of the show where because he has social anxiety, sometimes it can be as hard to be entertained by him doing the concept. Like, I don't like that juxtaposition. Other people might, but for me, I guess I just don't really like it when it's like he's good enough to be kick-ass, and he has a reason that he's behaving the way he does, but he just gets gonked out. I think maybe a similar comparison point is some people haven't liked My Hero Academia because of like the comical waterfall tear stuff that our main hero Deku sometimes does. His mom does it too, right? But it's just sort of like one of those things where it's just like kind of funny, but it's kind of the opposite of what you feel like the character should be doing. Like, even if he is being emotional, it feels like they've gone too far in the opposite direction for a joke, I think. And while I can tolerate that one from My Hero, I don't know. I guess How Not to Summon a Demon Lord Season 2 is a little weaker. Nothing too bad. I guess it's a joke that maybe they leaned a little heavier on than they needed to, but not so badly that you can't watch it and kind of enjoy what happens. And overall, you know, I think it kind of sort of felt like maybe Season 1 felt like there was a more, this is the flow that the season is going for, and Season 2 felt like it was more arcy but less episodes, I suppose. Which made it feel maybe not exactly rushed, but maybe not exactly as calm, I suppose. If you know what I mean there. So, yeah. Now, normally I would have talked about, and I guess I still can, because when I recorded my video last week, I got a cheat skill in Another World and became unrivaled in the real world too. Episode 1, I don't think was on Crunchyroll yet, and I didn't see it until the next day, and so I thought, okay, this is going to be something I watch Tuesday. But then Episode 2 came out earlier today, which makes sense based on when it aired, and maybe it was just delayed on last week. Yeah, no, except that the site says it aired on April 3rd, so I'm not exactly sure what all happened there, but it basically means I have 2 episodes to talk about here. And it basically means that normally I would have talked about this later near the bottom of the list, but I guess I can talk about it now. It's off to an okay start. The reason I'm only saying okay is because I think I'm still not quite sure where it's trying to go with this. So, like, Episode 1, so if there's any problem I have with Episode 1, it would really just be that our main character is supposed to look ugly, and I guess he's kind of fat. I mean, not kind of fat. He's really fat. But maybe there's a slight hint of unkemptness to him that is there. But outside of that, it felt like that if he just brushed his hair or something like that, he'd feel like a fucking hobbit. He feels kind of wholesome. Maybe this is just an American thing versus a Japanese thing. But, I didn't think he actually looked that bad in his original form. Now, granted, it's very interesting where it went, where he leveled up in the other world, and then because of that, his body just kind of instantly contorted into a chiseled statue, magazine cover, stereotypical anime protagonist sort of look, except of course people not calling him ugly when I guess he actually looks pretty good as an anime character. You know how a lot of anime characters, male or female, they're supposed to be ugly ones, but because they're drawn in a very standard anime style, they actually look kind of cutesy instead. So it's not supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be, he's actually supposed to look really good. Although if you had me line up a bunch of anime characters, I'm not sure if I would agree, because he just looked like everybody else. It's like that other anime. I forget the name. But the point is, you know, he kind of looks that way, and it's like, okay, well, that's a setup for us understanding the rules, but what kind of show is it going to be? And it's like, well, episode 2 has a chance to do that, and episode 2 kind of didn't. I say kind of didn't because I'm not 100% sure, because what it did was it gave us okay, he went there and came back, and over the course of 1 or 2 weeks, he now doesn't look like the same person. He didn't even know that he had changed because he had broken mirror out of frustration because he just didn't like looking at himself, which is, you know, a very touching and sad sort of thing. And even in his looking good right now state, he's acting like he did before, which is, you know, hard, but at the same time it's kind of hard because it's like, it would be nice to kind of reach out and be patient with somebody like that and be their friend or something. I don't know. But, you know, you put all that aside, the show already kind of was going in a direction where it was going to be good for him, whether or not he went to that isekai or not. And so basically, he was already on a path towards, he would become more fortunate in life. And the only question is, how much more fortunate is he because of that experience? It's kind of hard to tell. But he does have this school interaction going. It honestly feels a little otherworldly, not quite right. It's one of those things where I think you have to swallow a little bit and say, oh, it doesn't quite feel right. But I guess I'm going to wait for you to tell me what you're planning to do with this. You know, what is it cool about these characters? Because you almost feel like if the real world events like episode 2 happened, you would have thought, are these people scamming me? Is this a cult? It's full of fucking red flags. And I don't think the anime is going that way at all. And because of that, it makes it feel instead a little bit hand-given to the main character, to a degree. There's some elements that are like touching in the way it's approaching it, but others that are, you know, there. So it's like, okay, fine. But do we have any idea what kind of series this is going to be? No. It's like, okay, well, maybe this is a series where he has this isekai, and because he's going there and back, he's become a better person, and this is kind of just a school life drama where it's just about how it is. We'll find out when he tries out for a sports team. It's like, holy shit, because he's level 200 over in the isekai world, he can now pitch a baseball to the moon or something like that. But they haven't revealed anything like that either. And instead, it's like, oh, he went back to the isekai, and now he just saved the person. So now there's people there. So there's interactions in both. So what's the goal? We kind of know that he is strong, and he's definitely very capable in the isekai. He's reluctant in both, but more reluctant in real life, in the real world, so to speak. Sorry about the hiccups, Jesus. But what are they planning to do with it? And I don't know. This is an anime that's definitely going to need 3-episode treatment, I think. Unless we find out by the 3rd episode that it really is just doing nothing. And if we do, then I guess maybe you don't need the 3-episode treatment. But right now it's looking like it needs 3 episodes to kind of tell, is this good or not? So, curious, but still waiting. So next up, Kamikatsu, Working for God in a Godless World, Episode 1. What the fuck was that episode? I mean, I don't mean this in a bad way. It's sort of like, it began with this kind of setup that's just sort of like, I guess this is kind of interesting. Okay, well, there's another Japanese person making this that's obsessed with mostly naked piles of muscle men sort of thing, which is a common meme I've seen here and there in Japan. I think like that Pepsi Man game? No. There was another one for the Wii where you were supposed to make shapes with the hands. I forgot what it was called, but it had that meme in there too. It's been all over the place. Fruits of Evolution loved it. Ice Blade Sorcerer loved it. But this one so far doesn't look like it's loving it. Just kind of had that as a thing at the very beginning. But then our main character gets isekai'd. And it's really hard to make out what to think about this. So there's kind of this way that it flows where it's just sort of like, okay, yeah, he's kind of needing to be brought down a peg because he has these weird expectations, but nothing that's too egregious, and it's just sort of like he does seem to be falling in line. And then they kind of give implications like, well, something here seems a little maybe sinister, maybe out of place, but it's really hard to tell because they haven't actually set it up. But they did set it up enough such that something messed up happens. It's just like, well, that's pretty intense, but all of that is pretty normal. And then for the last 1 or 2 minutes of the show, all of a sudden, holy shit, did they forget how to edit or something like this? Because a lot of stuff just suddenly happens all at once. And I think it's cool. A lot of cool things happen. I'm surprised I'm not finding more GIFs on Giphy or whatever of some of that scene. Because I know people would probably be careful about the things where the goddess is there and she's this naked little girl who's hidden in halo light, so maybe it would be just fine. But there's also other ones where the way she just kind of looks at people, it's like, oh, Jesus Christ, did they just blow their animation budget for the entire series just to have her stare at somebody? Why is that not a GIF yet? I'm not quite sure. But, you know, it just... It felt like somebody was interrupted in the middle of a conversation for another thing to happen that led to the thing, and it's like, okay. So it's an interesting first episode just because the way it ends right there, you're like, okay, things just got really shaken up, and that's always a good thing, but you're not quite sure what got shaken up. Exactly. It's hard to tell what the implications and what the goals are going to be. What kind of show is it going to be after this? Is it going to do these things where she does these cool things with slight bursts of huge animation that come out of nowhere? It doesn't feel like it, but it feels like it needs to just because it's kind of the way, from a storytelling perspective, the first episode worked. But I don't know. I'm gonna need more than one episode to figure that one out, but interesting, but really weird. The legendary hero is dead. Most of the people in this show are assholes. If there were any reason I would stop watching, it's probably because I don't care about most of the characters. Actually, do I care about any of the characters? I'm not sure. I'm still waiting to see where it goes for that. Like, our main characters kind of got a ratty attitude. The people around him have a ratty attitude. The only person who didn't was the legendary hero, but as you can tell from the name of the show, he's dead. And it was a pretty fun execution. And the humor of the follow-up was actually pretty good, I thought. But I'm not sure about everything else about it. It's really hard to say, because beyond that joke working out, the setup for the joke, the execution of the joke, and the payoff for the joke, and the epilogue after the joke, you know, those were actually all pretty funnily handled. But beyond that, I'm not sure what to actually think about it. And if there's any reason it sticks around, it's just because there would be nothing else to watch on Thursday, so it probably gets watched. I don't know. We'll have to see. I'll have to give it more episode to kind of see what I feel about it. But as you can tell, I'm not a big fan of the characters. So, it's at risk. Next up, My One Hit Kill Sister, episode 1. So, this one's really weird. It's a show that seems to be resting too much on, oh, there was a miscommunication that happened, and because of that, our character needs to live a lie. But if there's anything about it that works out. So, the premise is the main character gets isekai'd, and he is just a nobody. He doesn't even have any awesome stats. But his sister goes to join him in the isekai. And she's super ridiculously overpowered. Okay, well, it's just a sister, so what's the relationship there? Well, it's less like a sister and more like just a girl that's just so obsessed with him that you'd call her yandere if she displayed any yandere tendency. She actually doesn't. So she's just totally there. And so it's weird because he's believed to be powerful because of the things she does. And he's trying to hide that because it turns out that because he got credit for stuff, he'll be executed if people find out he's weaker than it looks. And it sounds like a bad setup, but for some reason, and I think it's mostly because in her one-track mind of being like this, she actually kind of likes it. Like, she hates it when people call her younger brother weak or imply it. She's like, oh yeah, sure, I'll let you take the credit for that. Let's do this. And oh, you're getting credit for it. Perfect. Now nobody will think you're a pipsqueak. So for some reason, her optimism and nonsensical view save it from being too cringy for me. But if you're not listening to that and say, that sounds really weird, well, yeah, it is. Obviously, if you're somebody that's not very much into the incest stuff in general, even like stuff that just makes it only technically, maybe not even technically not, but maybe only legally so or something like that, you know, maybe this isn't the show for you. It's hard to tell because it doesn't even feel like that sort of stuff. And that could just be that it's very low on my list of things that triggers me. But for y'all, that might be very different. I'm not sure. All I know is I can definitely give it some more tries, you know, more episodes to show me what it's going to do. And yeah, I don't know. Otaku Elf. Not bad. I'm not sure that I enjoyed it enough that I'm definitely going to game for it, as in like it wouldn't. So like during the last season, farming life in another world was a high priority. I especially liked it that I would wake up every morning on Friday, and if I didn't have any early morning meetings, I could put that on while I'm catching up on emails and stuff like that at work, and just have a nice relaxing Friday. So I always looked forward to that. And I don't think Otaku, well, first of all, it's not going to come out early enough in the morning to do that. I think it's a 10 a.m. thing, maybe 11 a.m. And that's my time, Central Time. But even if it wasn't that, I guess thematically, I'm not quite sure what I think about it yet. It's kind of nice, and I might give it another episode just because I do want to make sure Sentai still gets me using High Dive some. But, you know, if I were to say anything's off about it, it would just be that I don't know, it's very slice of life and it's very cool, but I don't know where it's going to go from here and if it's going to actually be neat. The premise is basically just that, I mean, it's just a slice of life with an I don't know if you could call it an isekai twist, maybe a reverse isekai sliver, where the titular Otaku Elf was summoned from an isekai 400, 600 years prior. Something around that range. And they're just an immortal elf. But some of the elf tendencies they talk about just kind of had her develop into being wanting to be a closed-in, never leaving her room otaku who just wants to play games and buy stuff on the internet and, you know, be an otaku. And it's nice. I wouldn't call it bad. I just wondered if anything grabbed me specifically, and that's definitely just one of those things where I definitely go for, I was going to say anime that offer escapism, but I definitely like the medieval fantasy adventure lean a little bit more. But I don't know. I'm going to give it a little bit more to see what more I think about it. I also watched the first episode of Too Cute Crisis, and it was actually kind of dumb, but in, I would say, a very good, endearing way. Like, it's not one of those movies that's stupid for the sake of stupid, so it's stupid. It's just more like, you watch it and you're like, this thing that you're attributing to being unique to humans is not going to be unique to any other life forms in the world. So it's strange. It's sort of like an anime. So you know how a lot of anime out there have somebody from the isekai trying Japanese cuisine, and oh my god, whoever made this is the geniuses. It's the best thing ever made. Whoever knew they could balance the taste this way, and it's a very Japanese centric thing, and it's fine, But it felt like somebody turned that up to 11 and made that for just people interacting with mostly cats and dogs initially, but it looks like it's hinting at more than just that. And that's the stupidness. It's just like, okay, yes, cats and dogs are pretty great. Ferrets, hamsters, pandas, all that stuff. That's all cute too. It's just weird that for some reason everything's cute on Earth, and so basically, for all intents and purposes, it appears the universe has Earth standards of cuteness without having an Earth levels of cuteness or something like that. And so that's dumb, but I think it's okay because it's kind of just fun to watch what happens. Like, I don't feel it gets the mannerisms of cats perfectly. I don't feel like it gets the mannerisms of dogs perfectly. But it's just sort of fun, and I do want to see how it's going to unfold as it continues going, because the basic idea is the main character, they're here to destroy Earth, because it's just like, oh, why is this planet? It's got nothing that would help us. It's the least advanced civilization we've ever seen. Let's just get rid of it already. Well, we have to do research for it, and what is that? That's a cat! Oh my god, I'm dying because it's too cute! And it's that over time, I mean, she's been fucking taken hostage by a cat at this point. That cat adopted her, and what's she gonna do? Well, now she's finding herself a cat owner, and it's fun. And it's like, one of the worries I had of the show was that it's like, if it's too cat centric, well, I might agree that I prefer cats per dogs. There's a reason dogs are man's best friend, and there's really, it makes sense to be a fan of one or the other. They're our closest companions animal-wise. The only way you could get any closer and just get away from human DNA would be the gut bacteria that have been living in our intestines for ages. We've got a very close relationship with those, even closer than we do with cats and dogs. But, and that's one of those things why it's stupid. It's because it's kind of in the nature of life to find these cooperative niches. In order for things to become non-cooperative, you basically need things competing for resources, which is also why we don't go out into the streets and try to eat other people. It's because there's plenty of resources for other people to coexist with each other, and civilization collapses once we can no longer distribute food, water, etc. to everybody, and then people have to start fighting for that stuff. But same thing with organisms. Organisms are just going to cooperate, and that's just going to lead to pets, and pets is going to lead to things being cute. And like, part of the reasons cats and dogs have evolved the way they are is because it makes them work better with humans, and it's better. Like, a lot of dogs compared to wolves are holding on to traits that are more what you would see in wolf puppies, except they stay there in dogs for longer periods of time. Dogs have been changed by living with us, and by becoming subservient to us, they get to live alongside us. Cats, I think there's been some similar stuff going on where I think cats tend to be more vocal because they grow up with humans, but they haven't, I don't think they've been bred as much as dogs have, but at the same time, I think they still have this tendency to be able to connect with humans when they're more domesticatable species or something like that. Anyways, blah 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 blah. Too Cute Crisis. You know, again, I say it's dumb, but it's dumb in the right ways, and I do want to see more to see what it's going to do, because it's kind of cute. I also watched Mashley, Magic and Muscles episode. I'm not entirely sure what to think about it, but I do appreciate the fact that this is a show that's actually done a much better job in its first episode of letting me know what kind of series it's going to be. Now, I don't know that it's necessarily complete in that way, but I'd say it's much further along than the others. And while it isn't the most exciting thing, I am definitely kind of curious to see what it's going to do and see if it continues to entertain me. I found the first episode entertaining enough. Not sure if I found it to be the most compelling story, but not necessarily a bad story. So, definitely very curious about that one. Interested to see more of that. Next up, Summoned to Another World for a second time. So, this one is another one that's kind of an okay first episode. Again, a lot of isekais, the very first episode has to be dedicated almost entirely to what are the rules of isekaiing in this situation, right? So, so that we kind of have a better idea of the state of the world and our characters in it, and then maybe what's going to happen, what kind of show it's going to be, comes after that. And I'd say that Summoned to Another World for a second time does a good job of at least giving us a kind of understanding of the whys, the goals, etc. But I guess we just don't know what that adventure to that goal may look like, and whether or not that's the final goal or a fake goal that's been given to us. But that's okay. It's the first episode that did a lot of setup. The only thing that's really weird is they set up interesting characters, but I don't think any of them are part of our episode 2. Which does give our character kind of a chance to maybe do a faux hero's journey, I guess, where he maybe doesn't... He comes back just as strong as when he left, but then people are aware, oh, you were a kick-ass person here too, before. And they introduced other characters that he knew in his previous reincarnation, and it's a funny way to kind of do it. I don't know that I exactly believe the personality of the first girl they have remember that, but it's entertaining enough, and I guess they're not making her one of the characters he's traveling with, so I guess you don't have to worry about that too much. If he does build up other companions, then maybe we'll get to see if they're actually properly made to be interesting and something that'll be interesting to see over and over. I don't know. Guess we'll have to see. I also watched Rokudo's Bad Girls episode 1, and I'll probably give it more shot, but I kind of don't like it. So some of the things I do like about it. So it's a real life, and here's a weird twist that happens to our main character magically. And I appreciate the fact that he's not like the only one who knows it's happening, and everybody else is just like, oh, is this happening? He's got 2 friends that also kind of know exactly what's happening. I kind of appreciate that. I just don't like that it's kind of set up so that these girls can't help it but fall in love with him, or make their hearts go pitter-patter and then they can't help but follow it. It's hard to say exactly what feels off about it, so much as, I don't know, I guess it's just a convenient, easy way out that's been made for our main character. And I'm having to sit here question if we're really feeling anything resembling character or story for these other characters. It's hard to say. Like, if episode 2, the effects suddenly vanished, I guess things would just suck even more for our main character. I don't know. And the end goal of this, I think, is that he grows as a person. Maybe. We'll have to see if this is something like a Kenichi's Mightiest Disciple sort of thing. And, you know, that one was pretty good. His growing as a character in that one was kind of nice. It grew alongside of his abilities, but, you know, his abilities were there to not... his growing abilities weren't there to hold him down and just make him a stereotype. And I don't think this one's doing that, but yeah, I don't know. The execution is just kind of unsettling a little bit, I guess. Let's see. Second episode of The Aristocrats of the Worldly Adventure, Serving Gods Who Go Too Far, episode 2. Fun episode. Maybe the same problem as the first episode, and same problem for some of these others, in that I'm not really quite sure what the end goal is here. Like, does it have anything it's aiming for? Do I know what kind of show it's going to be? It's tricky because, both of these episodes have been the introducing us to the world episodes, whereas this one has been a little bit more focused on him being a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old who's just kind of OP, basically. But he's still being tutored, and it ends with a kind of funny misunderstanding of sorts. But otherwise, we're there and we're like, okay, but what's he going to do? We kind of know he can do stuff that people wouldn't be expecting him to do, but what are we expecting of this show? And I'm not sure. Again, there's small elements of it that remind me of By the Grace of the Gods in terms of, I guess his next thing is just to meet the next set of people that are just going to be not only introducing extended cast, but long-term awe of his capabilities, maybe, which I guess makes it actually more comparable with In Another World with My Smartphone. Not directly, but kind of as a point of comparison. But I don't know. I don't know that it's necessarily that conflict yet. Still have more I want to see there. But speaking of In Another World with My Smartphone, season 2, I did watch episode 2 today, and it was okay. I think if you've watched In Another World with My Smartphone before, it's probably just more of kind of the same neatness, with the main difference being that, like I mentioned, one of the problems with the first season is, or did I mention this? Maybe I've only thought this. One of the problems with the first season is that his harem kind of begins interesting, they're introduced interesting, but then they just sort of become side characters while he does everything. And it's just kind of meh. But season 2 is pulling it back in and fixing that as well. So that's 2 season 2s that are doing that correctly. Good for them. But otherwise, I guess I would just say that it's doing entertaining stuff, kind of building stuff up. But unlike By the Grace of the Gods, I guess it is actually building up to something that sounds like an ultimate conflict. Whereas that one was not really. Oh, let's see. I already mentioned that one. I watched why Ray Lyanna ended up at the Duke's Mansion, episode 1. I was originally not going to, but then it was there. It's just like, you know what? I'll just go ahead and do it. It's another one of those ones where the main character wakes up, this is a story for girls where my character dies. Although, unlike the previous couple, villainous, all paths lead to doom, and the previous one where she was wowing the Demon Lord, this one isn't, I just woke up and I'm the villain. She realized she became aware of who she was in her past life and realized that she's a character who's doomed to be assassinated as the trigger for the main story that she read. So instead she's trying to find a way around that. And I guess compared to the other two, this one feels like it's more interesting because I guess there's a little bit more intrigue. It may be slightly less character interaction-y stuff going on, I suppose. What is that? Relationship drama going on initially. So I think it's possible that this is still shoujo, but it is definitely feeling a little more, ever so slightly more mature than like those other examples, which kind of have slightly more otherworldly, maybe comical. Neither of those feel like the right word, but hopefully you get the general idea of what I'm suggesting. It just feels like, those have a more simplified ways of what they're approaching, and this one, not quite sure. I do have to give it credit, because I do think that while there's been like political talk and motivation stuff going on, I feel like they haven't done this thing where a lot of shows create, like, here's 15 kingdoms and their interconnected relationships with each other. Info dumped on you on the first 5 minutes of the show, so I hope you paid attention and you are very interested in the world. It's like, yeah, I'm sure some people are. For me, being info dumped that much information at once doesn't help. Clearly it's because I'm watching 15 fucking things at once, but you know, that doesn't help. This one seems to be okay. This is stuff more directly related and interesting, and I'm curious to see where it goes. I may or may not keep it, depending on, you know, whether or not it stays attached to my tastes or not. And then, last but not least, we had a Dead Mount Death Play, episode 1. That one was interesting. You know, that one is another isekai, although that one's a reverse isekai, where I'm burping. Good news is the dinner that I ate was a little tasty, so it's actually not that bad. But it's a reverse isekai, so they went from a medieval fantasy magic to a kind of slightly more modern Japan, I guess. Like with cyberpunky sort of stuff, but not super cyberpunky. It's almost like modern Japan with an additional couple of years where some cyberpunk stuff has been introduced here and there, if that makes sense. And it's kind of hard to tell what kind of show this is going to be. It's, I guess, showed slightly edgier tendencies, maybe, but not sure. It was interesting and nice, just kind of, you know, an introduction to, okay, here's the gimmick that we're playing with. It's interesting because I was just trying to think a little bit about Code Geass, but that one didn't just introduce the gimmick, it also introduced our characters' motivations, and it's just like thunder right at the end of the episode. Code Geass is kind of wonderful for all that stuff. Good job. But this one, I'm not quite sure where it's planning to go with this, because our main character talks about, oh, I can finally look for the peace I've always been looking for, and we don't really know what he was looking for and why that wasn't something that he thought was just there, and he just happened to, you know, essentially wake up on the bad side of town. It's not that, but that's the essential feeling I suppose it's trying to go with. And I'll have to see more to see it, but I enjoyed the one episode. Hopefully, you know, all the stuff I talked about, y'all found it interesting, and I guess if there's any series that you start watching, because I described it and you're like, oh, I guess that sounds interesting, and you watch it and you're like, oh, I guess you did a good job of talking about that, then that's a good thing. If not, well, the good news is, hopefully there's no ads I'm playing. I'm guessing there probably are. I don't know if I've ever seen a YouTube video without ads, but I just know that I never clicked on that monetization tab, so really you'll only find it on the old games that Nintendo's like, this is a Nintendo recording you put on here, so we're going to monetize this for you and take the money, and it's whatever. This is a hobby. It's not something I'm doing to try to get money, you know. Basically, I don't think I could make enough money on YouTube to buy all these things, so, you know, that's why this is a hobby. This kind of just helps me stay focused. This is a reason to stay focused, make sure I keep up on stuff. Especially these days when I could just easily say, I'm just going to take a break. Sorry, I was just going to say I could just take a week off or something. And then I just realized I didn't do my Animal Crossing today. So I guess I'm taking this week off. And then in this Sunday, when all the Egg Day bullshit is gone, I'll clean up the islands and upload them to the Dream thing. And anyways, maybe I'm at the babbling stage, because beyond that, just tired. Just tired. Alright, here's this week's anime DVD collection update. Y'all have a nice week.